in Los Feliz today, right on the border of Silver Lake. Hyperion's down below, the Silver Lake Ridge and the reservoir beyond that. And we're at the home of the architect Dick Lowry, who studied architecture at USC and worked with the likes of Buffstraub and Hensman. And this is a mid-century modern home with all the classic elements.
Yeah, classic is correct. What I love about mid-century homes is that the exterior is celebrated just as much as the interior. And on this one, as soon as you enter through that front door, you've got this remarkable view of Silver Lake Hill.
Every room's connected to the outdoors through walls of glass. And you've got this exposed structural system with slender wood posts, larger wood purlins, and the roof rafters supporting the 2x wood decking, with a fire-resistant standing seam metal roof above. But I love the way the rafter tail ends project and provide this rhythm of structure on both sides of the property.
Right, and on this side, you've got where the chimney begins, the roof stops, but the structure continues. So it's a representation of the roof there, but there is no roof.
And the chimney itself is so great because it could have just been one big rectangle going all the way through the roof and sort of heavy, clunky thing. Monolithic.
Yeah.
But what they did was separated it and pulled the chimney element toward the viewer and then tapered it through the top, which makes it almost seem taller and more slender. And the penetration at the roof is, 2 feet or something, where at the base it's 5 feet. So that's just a really nice composite design move.
There's a window on the inside that lets you see the chimney, straight view of it. I think we should take them in so that we can have a tour of the inside and they'll see that wonderful window that I'm talking about.
Let's check it out. At the entry here, I'm just struck with how this is a wood house, and I'm thinking of the case study house program, which was more about steel and glass and concrete. This is almost like the pace setter house program that Harwell Harris participated in, that's more organic, coming out of the Frank Lloyd Wright tradition of natural materials, and all this beautiful structure, this big purlin, the rafters that have this notch so that at the end you're looking at a 5-inch element instead of an 8-inch element, so it makes it look like a slender little thing. And then you've got this guardrail that had to have been selected by a colorist. I mean, this blue teal, I guess I might call it, is a very sophisticated color that's hard to get from looking at color chips.
Yeah, I mean, it really is remarkable. One of the things I love about architecture in general are these little discoveries that you make while previewing a home. And here, as you look, there's this frosted glass, this honeycomb frosted glass. And then you're like wondering, what are these fins for? But actually, right behind these fins, the glass is actually transparent. And so you can actually, the person on the inside could view who's at the front door, which is really cool. But then if you look at around the corner, that same detail is happening where the bathroom is. So you're getting a glimpse to the exterior, but it also offers privacy.
And then is that detail the same as in the guest house above the garage? There's a louvered piece there. We'll have to take a look at it in more detail. But now that you're mentioning that, that's got to be what that is.
Yeah.
Vertical grain fir door, original hardware, with this taper that Spencer was observing throughout. We see it on the pulls in the kitchen, we see it on the guardrail, handrail going down the stairs. Just all this stuff sums up to this big experience.
So we're inside now, we're here at the entry, and the way that this is organized is that all of the public space is up above and all the private space is down below. But what's happening here is that the two spaces are being divided by this exterior deck, which is a really nice touch.
I love the honesty of the materials though. Everything's expressed. I mean, the structure is the form. You've got this big beam supported by walls on either end and the roof rafters supporting this 2x tongue and groove decking, which, as Luis pointed out, it is the roof structure.
Yeah,
they probably added insulation when they did the standing.
Our cinematographer,
yes,
he pointed out an architectural detail to us, which is awesome.
He's very attuned to this stuff. Yeah. And originally they wouldn't have had any insulation up there, so this would have been pretty warm in here. So I'm sure they added insulation and then the standing seam roof. But you've got all this original paneling, and I have to say, this furniture by 1,000 times better. Kirsten at 1,000 times better is really exquisite. Like when I walked in here, I was like, these people live here, right? But no, this is actually staging.
And then we were talking about the chimney on the outside, but here we are on the inside. And like I was saying, is you get glimpses of the trees on either side, so it's a really nice touch. And then,
oh yeah, that aspect.
right,
Probably a pretty heavy window, but it would have operated like a hopper. The two hinges are here, and it would have come to a point, and I'm sure there are chains on each side that would have held it in place. But then you've got this fireplace element. The hearth is raised up off the ground by a foot or so. And so you're more at eye level sitting on the couch. And then the dynamic sort of sculptural aspect of that chimney, you know, it's a horizontal element here and two vertical elements on the other side with this kind of ziggurat step into that tapered chimney.
the chimney is treated two different ways. So here you have this raised hearth. In the primary, the hearth is actually down below, like it's actually flush with the floor. Did you notice that?
I didn't.
Yeah.
No, we'll have to check that out. And so now I'm struck with, you know, this is an open plan, but there's differentiation of the various spaces. And so sometimes we see these plans where it's just one big room and it doesn't feel right, where we can see all the way into the kitchen and into the dining area, but we're also looking through this outdoor deck, which could either be a dining area or a sitting area, or it also reminds me of the Gamble house and the old sleeping porches. You know, I could see having a cot up here and sleeping out on cool spring or fall evenings.
It does kind of feel like the Gamble house a little bit out here.
Yep.
And then look at these views. You've got the mountains on one side, and then you've got Silver Lake on the other. And
those mountains for sure are going to be snow-capped.
oh, at some point, yeah, that's your favorite thing, snow-capped mountains.
So as you might expect from this era, got to have a bar. And you know, this underwent a renovation after 50 years of occupancy by the architect and his family. And those owners, the previous owners, had the good sense to keep this original Formica countertop. But you see all the elements in the home, the tapered kind of backsplash, the tapered pulls on the cabinets, flat face fronts that you'll see in the kitchen, the knife hinges. I just love that when those have been preserved. And all those elements are here and in the kitchen.
Yeah, the home is really cohesive in that way. The kitchen's treated that way as well. Should we go and show them?
Yep. I really love the openness. You know, we're just looking all out at the hills and the sky. And some of the things I'm aware of in here are that, you know, I'm having trouble differentiating between old and new. You know, I know the cabinets are original because we can see the hardware, the pulls, the tapered pulls, the knife hinges that you just pointed out. And I love the way that floats. These louvered doors are sort of vintage 1970s, so those are original. But then this clever enclosure of the ductwork, you know, we don't know if air conditioning would have been original, but the plywood of the enclosure downstairs makes me think that it was original. And then we've got this really compatible kitchen remodel in here with a new, I think, quartz countertop, beautiful European hardware. Maybe that's, I don't know what kind of tile that is, but the vertical placement of the tile. And so they didn't keep the Formica. They weren't pretending that this is a restoration. It's a remodel where they took artistic license, but it's all very compatible with the original design intent, I think.
Right, and then if you think about it, it's almost bordering on the edge of not being mid-century because it is in the 70s. So that brings me to this beam and the structure up here, in that most mid-century homes are supported by posts. But here, if you think about it, or if you look, all of the walls, if you all the way down to the living room, are actually, the beams are supported on like partial walls here.
True, at the center of the ridge beam, and then on the outside edge, we see these 4x posts that support the purlin on this exterior building envelope. Got the original fixtures, and then this wonderful yellow window. Again, that color had to have been selected by somebody who really understood color. You don't go down to Sherwin-Williams and pull out that fan deck and end up with that color, or the color of that tile, or the color of the blue on the guardrails. They're really sophisticated color selections.
So we're downstairs now in the private area, and you and I were just doing this tapping to see what we were working with, and you were describing it?
Yeah, this is a metal element where the rest of this is wood, and there's so much design in here. This wasn't like they just called in a carpenter and said, build me a stair. They said, we want an open, this is the architect who lived here, designed this house for himself and his family. And you got the big wood stringers, this substructure that supports a hardwood finish, and these little brass screws, 2 on each side, that hold that in place. The steel comes down and bends out, and then walking down and feeling how the fingers can wrap around to the other side. This was designed to the dimensions of a human hand and tapered in this direction. And so there's just so much thought that went into this, not least of which is the finishes. This is a high gloss finish for, heavily handled and trafficked area. This is flat. This is semi-gloss. I love all that design. I feel like we could talk about that for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So let's check out these secondary bedrooms. There are 2 bedrooms on this end, separated by the living, den family area, with the primary bedroom on the opposite end. Mm-hmm. Love these original doors with that full vertical pull, original plywood, and these wonderful drawers down below, which have kind of a dual function. They are both functional in that if you had that up here, most people wouldn't be able to use those, where down here, the kids can throw their Legos in there and books and your socks and whatever down in these drawers. But it also provides this loft to the entire cabinet closet. So it raises it up off the floor 10 inches or so.
I'm loving the plywood on each side. This is really beautiful. But the problem I'm having is that my 5-year-old would have a field day of just writing all over it. I'm not kidding.
That's what the palm sander's for. And then these original light fixtures built in.
And these are good room sizes. You have 2 rooms on either side. This one has a remarkable view of, again, Silver Lake. But this is where the kids would be, and then on the other side is where the parents would be.
Yep. Tell me how you read this fireplace.
I think it's interesting that it just stops and allows the beam to be expressed rather than just continuing, going up.
I agree. And that's one of those design decisions. Somebody made that decision to not have the vertical element be the dominating element. So you read the beams. But there's a serenity that comes over me in this house, because it's very much the same from room to room. The beams, the decking, the plywood. This plywood's a little different. It's kind of a board and batten situation with these tapered battens that cover the joints. The built-in light fixtures here, they're unpainted. In the secondary bedroom, they were painted. The yellow valance, the floating cabinets with the vertical pulls, the lower pull drawers that make that system float.
I'm enjoying that there's no hierarchy in terms of storage space. The kids have the same amount of storage as the parents. It's essentially the same setup.
That's true. This bedroom's a little bigger, and then this, the piece de resistance. I love this. And again, this is part of a remodel. The fact that those are self-closing drawers with plywood boxes. They remade this with new hardware, but they kept the original faces and countertop and pulls. So it looks original, but it has the functionality of 21st century cabinet making.
So we're here in a separate studio. So over there is the primary residence, and then this would have acted as a studio of some sort.
Yep, studio or home office. It's not quite an ADU because it has a half bath, not a full bath. There's not a shower or tub in here. I think it was the architect's studio. I mean, this was, Dick Lowry's home, and I think this was his architecture studio. I could be wrong. I mean, you've got all the original elements, just like the main house. You've got posts and beams, the valance covering, well, here's the track. Here they're actually curtains with the track hidden by that valance. And the decking that supports the roof, the plywood, all the elements consistent with the architecture of the main house. But then this wonderful remodel. And we got to find out who the architect was that did this remodel, because it's just exquisite.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we were just like going through the details, and everything that they've done is just thought out.
How about that pull?
A lot of these like plywood type of cabinetries, as we're saying, looks dated, but it doesn't look dated here.
No, it's nice to see the plies in the plywood, and I love these pulls. It allows for a flat front, hardware-less face, and I like the way they did Formica here, but the plywood face there.
And I'm jealous of a lot of their selection of tile, because this looks really great for this space. And then I'm also jealous of the fixtures that they picked out, because here and the kitchen have really just great, beautiful, sleek fixtures.
I mean, they're brand new. They're of this millennium, and they're European. They're probably Growy or something, but really tasteful and compatible.
Blanco. You
I'm
ever
not
heard of that?
familiar with that brand.
Me neither.
And then I want to call this heath tile. Maybe it's not, but it's a beautiful horizontal module, kind of a counterpoint to the vertical tile in the kitchen of the main house.
And then I have a feeling, I mean, this piece here, the cabinet on the other side, I have a strong suspicion that this one was intended for the house as well, but this one happens to be on wheels.
I love that. So you could just roll it over to the other side and put a bed here in a corner if you had somebody visiting from out of town.
Should we talk about these skylights here? Or would you call them skylights, or would you call them?
They are kind of skylights. They're windows, but they're in the roof. They're almost like dormer vents, but they pop up and form this butterfly condition that goes in the opposite direction of the general roof pitch.
And they've got those louver fins on the ends, basically, which you were saying matches what's happening in the bathroom, and then what we were talking about matches in the main house
at the front
too.
entry. Yeah. And they're functional. The one at the entry allows you to view the visitor. These shade the windows from, I think, the southern sun, and that louver prevents people from looking at you in the bathroom when they're at this front door. Mm-hmm. So they're functional, but they're in conversation with one another. And then what about that element that you pointed out next to the front door?
Yeah, that composition of that window is just quite exquisite. I wonder if there was fins on the other side of this at one point. I'm certain that this translucent window was intended to be transparent because it matches the same detail as the main house.
I agree, yeah. I wonder why they decided to change that. But then look at these two glass patterns, 3 are the same. And then this reminds me of the honeycomb pattern on the front entry, but it's different. And there's something about the scale and proportions there that I can't articulate that gives me a good feeling. Wow, what a comfortable space. I just love being in this house. I guess what I'm struck with is that it's like a no bullshit house. It's not screaming at you. It's not trying to be architecture. It's just a very elegant structural system connected to nature. It's listed by Carrie Field at Coldwell Banker, who was so kind to let us have this kind of time in the house. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom main house with a separate studio and half bath. It's just under 3,000 square feet. It's about a 16,000 and change square foot lot, and the list price is $4,295. We're architecture brokers. We'd love to represent you. Sometimes people think we just do free home tours, which we do. It's funny, we kind of do this avocationally and vocationally. We were on the Mac Center tour 2 weekends ago at Silvertop, Today we're here checking out a new listing, and we just feel very fortunate that this is what we do for a living.
Absolutely.
But we'd love to represent you.
Yep. And thank you guys for watching.
All right. On that note, high five me.